Hi, first graders. Happy Wind Down Wednesday. I'm so glad you're here with us this evening. Find some place cozy to sit and we will get started. It was so much fun welcoming all of you back to school after Thanksgiving break. I hope your break was relaxing, and I also hope you were able to spend some time making fun memories. I also want to spend a little bit of time sharing with you why I'm so thankful. We spent some time in class sharing about that, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I'm thankful for our class community. I want to start by sharing that I'm very thankful for all families partnering with me to ensure that your child makes as much progress as possible, socially, emotionally, and academically. Your dedication to your child's progress means a lot to me, and I appreciate all of your efforts. I also want to thank all students in class because you make a huge difference in our classroom. Our class would not be the same without each of you. And I really want you to know that your bucket filling comments and bucket filling behavior helps us create a really strong class community, which feels like a family. Kiss your brain. Also, I want to thank you for making safe, respectful, and responsible choices throughout the entire school building. I really appreciate you creating a classroom together where it is safe to make mistakes and learn from them. I love the class community that you all worked together to create. Thank you for all of your help and keep up the great work. In class, we learned about the word tradition, and we learned about the definition of the word tradition, and then we discussed some examples. A tradition is something that is repeated. It can be a belief, it can be an event or an activity, and it's normally completed with the same people. A tradition can be repeated each day, each week, each month, each year. And it is normally something that is passed down from generation to generation. That means that your ancestors, your family that lived before you, passed down these activities or these beliefs to other people in your family. So, for example, your grandparent may have passed down or shared a special activity with your parents, who may be sharing that special activity or belief or event with you. Some traditions we discussed in class are blowing out birthday candles when it is your birthday, or going and seeing a parade to celebrate a holiday. We also discussed how many traditions are connected to holidays because holidays occur throughout the year and people celebrate them in special ways. Some people may dress in a certain way to celebrate a holiday, that would be a tradition. So in class, friends shared some traditions that they participate in with their family. I encourage you to speak with your family about some traditions that your family does or some traditions you'd like to begin. It was so much fun sharing with you a tradition that I participate in each year, which is making cards for people who may need some bucket filling during the winter season. I want to thank all students for making colorful Thanksgiving cards for people in our community who needed some bucket filling over Thanksgiving break. We're going to read an extra silly Thanksgiving book where we're going to see some traditions take place. The story is called Thanksgiving at the Tappletons by Eileen Spinelli, illustrated by Mary Ann Coca Leffer. Thanksgiving at the Tappletons. For Jer, who made my wishbone wish come true. That's a tradition that some families do. They save a wishbone, which is one of the bones from the turkey, and they let it dry, and then when they break the wishbone, they make a wish. In memory of Uncle Dan, Noni and Grandpa love Mary Ann. Thanksgiving at the Tappletons was always a big day. Thanksgiving at the Tappletons meant, of course, the Tappleton family. Here we can see some photographs of the Tappleton family. Now, these are not real photographs. They are drawings because this is a fiction story. A non-fiction story would have actual photographs taken by a camera instead of drawings. Mr. Tappleton, Mrs. Tappleton, Jenny Tappleton, Kenny Tappleton, and Grandmother and Grandfather Tappleton, and Aunt Hedda and Uncle Fritz, and most certainly, of course, the turkey and the trimmings. Our family, Grandpa and Grandma, Uncle Fritz and Uncle Fritz and Aunt Hedda. Did you eat turkey over Thanksgiving break? It was still dark when Mrs. Tappleton lit the oven and took the big turkey out of the refrigerator. Just then, someone knocked at the kitchen door. It was Mike the milkman. Good morning, Mrs. Tappleton. I thought you might like some eggnog for the holiday. Eating and drinking certain drinks and foods is often a tradition for people. Every winter, some families get together and bake cookies. As Mrs. Tappleton reached for the eggnog, the turkey slipped from under her arm. Now, on a warmer day, this might not have been a problem, but this Thanksgiving Day was quite cold, and the step was covered with ice. Can you make a prediction? What might happen? Use the clues to help you make a guess about what will happen. What do you know about ice? What do you know about things that touch ice? You could use the sentence starter. My prediction is the turkey Let's see if your prediction is accurate, if it's correct. Before she or Mike could even think, the turkey had slithered into the yard. Get it! Shouted Mrs. Tappleton. Why did I read that sentence with expression or excitement? Yeah, it ends with an exclamation mark. I have to change my voice when I read that sentence. This is dialogue. Words that are between quotation marks is called dialogue. That means the character is actually saying those words. Mike reached out, but the turkey skidded past him through the gate and into the street. Hurry! Screamed Mrs. Tappleton. Stop that turkey! Put your thumb up if you think he's going to catch it. Put your thumb in the middle if you don't. The milkman chased the turkey, Mrs. Tappleton chased the milkman, and the turkey slid down the hill into the pond. Plop! Splash! Hey! There's some onomatopoeia words, sound words. It bubbled out of sight. How do you think Mrs. Tappleton is feeling? And how do you know that? She might be feeling surprised or shocked or angry or frustrated. And we can look at her face to help us know that's the emotion she's having. When Mr. Tappleton came down to breakfast, he took a long sniff. Everyone breathe in through your nose. I don't smell turkey, he said to his wife. Why doesn't he smell turkey cooking? The turkey is in the pond. Of course you don't smell turkey, she replied. You have a cold. Is Mrs. Tappleton being honest with Mr. Tappleton? I don't have a cold, he insisted. Now, why would she be telling him he has a cold? Why does she want him to think that he has a cold and that's why he can't smell? Let's read on to find out. Mrs. Tappleton shook some pepper in the air. Her husband sneezed. Achoo! Pepper can help make someone sneeze. So why would she be putting some pepper on him to make him sneeze? She's trying to convince him that he has a cold, and that's why he can't smell. See, she said, you do have a cold. Now that word do is italicized, so I have to change my voice when I read that word. I emphasize that word. Achoo. After breakfast, Mr. Tappleton put on his coat and scarf and hat and gloves. I'm going to the bakery to buy our pies. Mrs. Tappleton handed him his boots. Where are these? She said. I know for a fact. It is quite slippery out today. We know that a fact is something that is true, that can be proven. Now, why would she know that it's slippery out? Remember what happened to the turkey? Sim's Bakery was so crowded, the line reached out into the sidewalk. Mr. Tappleton hated to wait in long lines. Oh my. Hate is a strong word. It doesn't sound like he likes long lines very much. So he went to the diner for a cup of coffee. There he is. And there's the long line. By the time he got back, the long line was gone, and so were the pies. Here are the workers at the bakery. No pumpkin, no mince, no rhubarb, nothing. Those are all the different flavors of pies. Mr. Tappleton was afraid to go home with nothing. So he doesn't want to go home and have to tell his family that there were no more pies. 2 boxes tied up with string, please, he said. Mrs. Sims stared at him. You mean 2 empty boxes? That's right. How silly. He's taking home 2 empty boxes. Here he is at home talking to Mrs. Tappleton. My, they feel light, remarked Mrs. Tappleton. Certainly, they are light, retorted Mr. Tappleton. Mrs. Sims prides herself on how light her pies are. Now, is Mr. Tappleton being honest with Mrs. Tappleton? We've been talking in class about integrity, doing the right thing, even when no one's looking. Could Mr. Tappleton have said, I made a mistake. I didn't wait in the long line. I'm sorry. They ran out of pies. How can I help? Can we think flexibly and come up with another plan? Mrs. Tappleton set the table. She called to her son, Kenny, you make the salad. You may make the salad. There's lettuce in the crisper, which is a drawer in the refrigerator, and carrots and radishes too. So here we see Kenny thinking about the carrots, the radishes, the lettuce, and also some bunnies who are eating them. What feeling do you think Kenny's having? Let's take a look at his face. He looks a little worried. What do you think might have happened? Tell someone at home. Kenny's face grew pale, which means light. Just yesterday, he had emptied the crisper and fed all the vegetables to the rabbits in Mr. Butterworth's class. How could he tell his mother? He couldn't. He could show integrity and be honest. Do the right thing. So he covered the empty salad bowl with aluminum foil and stuck it in the back of the refrigerator. Now, if it's in the back of the refrigerator, someone might not notice it. When the others went to pick up the relatives at the train station, Jenny stayed behind to mash the potatoes. Did you eat potatoes or mashed potatoes over Thanksgiving break? Did you visit with relatives or family, or did you see them or call them or write them a message? Or maybe you spent time thinking about them. Every year, this was her job. Hey, do you think that's a tradition for her? Every year, she is in charge of mashing the potatoes. She loved it. This year, she thought, I'll make them even better. I'll use the blender. Just as Jenny flicked on the switch, the phone rang. Ring, ring. It was her best friend, Nora. If there was one thing Jenny loved to do better than mashed potatoes, it was talk. Jenny talked and talked and talked to Nora, and she might still be talking today, had not a wet glump of something hit her on the back of the head. She turned to see what it was. Splat! Another glump hit her in the face. The blender was going wild, and mashed potatoes were flying everywhere. Without even saying goodbye to Nora, Jenny hung up the phone, scrubbed her face, and wiped mashed potatoes from nearly everything in the kitchen. She finished just as the others came back. Uncle Fritz patted his stomach. I'm hungry. he said. Grandfather Tappleton laughed. I'm as hungry as an elephant. If you say that you're as hungry as an elephant, that means you are very hungry. Everyone sat down at the table. It was a Tappleton tradition for grandmother to say the Thanksgiving prayer. Some families say a prayer before they eat or during a holiday. Praying is a time where you can think about why you're thankful. It's a tradition for the Tappleton family to do that. It's something they repeat each Thanksgiving. As soon as the turkey is ready, she smiled. That's when she was going to say the prayer. I'm as hungry as 2 elephants, said Grandfather. Mr. Tappleton went to the oven. I'll carve the turkey now. He opened the oven. It's a tradition in some families for a certain family member to carve the turkey, which means cut it. The turkey is gone! Who remembers where the turkey is? Mr. Tappleton searched on the table and under the table and in every kitchen cabinet. He looked into the sink and in the broom closet. I can't find the turkey anywhere. Mrs. Tappleton took a deep breath. Everyone take a deep breath in. She told them how their fine turkey had slipped out the door and down the steps and across the yard and through the gate and down the street and plop, splash into the pond. So much for the turkey, said Uncle Fritz, and his stomach grumbled a little louder. Never mind, said Aunt Hedda good-naturedly. We'll fill up on the trimmings, which are all the sides, all of the other food at the Thanksgiving meal. I'll get the salad, Jenny announced. Then Grandmother can say the prayer. Jenny set the bowl on the table and peeled off the aluminum foil. Everyone stared at the salad. That was not there. We can see Kenny. He doesn't look like he's feeling too well. And everyone else looks surprised. We can see that one of the family members, this one, who isn't as old as the grandfather, so he must be Uncle Fritz. He looks like he's hungry and wondering where that salad is. Everyone stared at the salad that was not there. I fed the rabbits at school, confessed Kenny. Uncle Fritz looked downright gloomy, which means sad. So much for the salad. His stomach rumbled again. I'm as hungry as 3 elephants, sighed Grandfather. Kenny jumped up. We'll have Jenny's mashed potatoes. How do you think Jenny feels about them looking for the mashed potatoes? He brought the pot from the kitchen and lifted the lid. I was on the phone, said Jenny meekly, and the blender went wild. So much for the potatoes. Uncle Fritz's stomach rumbled even more. I'm as hungry as 4 elephants, Grandfather declared. The pies, cried Mrs. Tappleton. I'll get the pies. I'll say grace, which is another word for prayer. As soon as the pies are cut, Grandmother smiled. Mrs. Tappleton brought in the boxes, set them down, and untied the string. You brought home 2 empty boxes, she glared, which means she looked at someone unhappily. She glared at Mr. Tappleton, who covered his ears. 5 elephants, groaned Grandfather, which means he's as hungry as 5 elephants. The dining room was quiet. Everyone looked down at the empty table. Uncle Fritz muttered something, but it could not be heard above the rumble of his stomach. A tear rolled down Jenny's cheek. No Thanksgiving dinner, she sniffled. Nothing to say a prayer for, sighed Kenny. Grandmother smiled. Everyone show me your smile. Of course there is something. There is more to Thanksgiving than turkey and trimmings. And then Grandmother Tappleton asked everyone to bow their heads and to hold hands around the dining room table. This might be a tradition at your home, or you may do something different. And this is the Thanksgiving prayer, she said. Turkeys come and turkeys go, and trimmings can be lost, we know. But we're together, and that's what matters, not what's served upon the platters. Amen. The word platters is a different word for plates. That was a wonderful prayer, said Aunt Hedda. Mrs. Tappleton jumped up. We have liverwurst and cheese in the refrigerator. I'll help fix the sandwiches, offered Mr. Tappleton. Hey, it sounds like they're being flexible. They're coming up with a different plan. Jenny wiped her tear away. I'll get the pickles. Kenny laughed. I'll open a jar of applesauce for dessert. And so the Tappletons had their Thanksgiving dinner after all. Uncle Fritz's stomach stopped rumbling, and Grandfather Tappleton ate enough liverwurst to feed 6 elephants. That's how hungry he was. In fact, everyone had plenty to eat. But most of all, they had each other. Our best Thanksgiving! Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm so glad we had a chance to read this super silly story and learn about the traditions in the Tappletons' home. I am looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, and I hope everyone has a great night. Bye!